Welcome to Women Who Innovate, a podcast series presented by Randstad Canada as part of their Women Transforming the Workplace program. Here, we're exploring winning strategies for navigating the ever-evolving labor market through a series of thought-provoking, inspiring interviews with bold and passionate women who are shaping the workplaces of tomorrow. Hi, I'm your host, Jennifer Hargreaves, and today it is my pleasure to introduce you to Chrisbergeron, Vice President of Content Experience at Cosette. We hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks for joining us, Chris. Maybe you could start by giving us a brief introduction. What do you do at Cosette, and what is Cosette?
So Cosette is one of the largest ad and communications agencies in Canada. We have large clients across the country. And specifically what I'm doing is in charge of a new discipline in advertising that has been around now for only a few years, which is content. There's a lot of desire for brands and companies to tell their stories in a more editorial way and talk to their consumers in a more conversational way. So that's what I do on the daily.
And you started your career in journalism.
Exactly. So I started in the mid-90s as a freelance journalist, mostly covering entertainment and culture, all the way until 2010. And then I made the switch to advertising for reasons that were more personal than professional, let's say.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What attracted you to the industry?
Well, in fact, being transgendered and a bit of a late bloomer, because I started my transition very late in life, in my late 30s, 40 for my actual medical transition, I was looking for a field where there was a little bit more room for self-expression in the way I dressed, in the way I spoke, in the way I showed myself to the world. And at the time, journalism was a bit of a boys' club, I have to say. And I was the chief editor of a publication called Voir, which was a very well-read weekly in Montreal, Quebec City, Ottawa. We had magazines all over the East Coast. And when I started transitioning, I realized, or at least started expressing a more feminine way of being. I realized that I was perhaps losing a little bit, of my credibility. Perhaps I was being kicked out of the boys' club or something. Ultimately, I was let go. So I asked myself, well, if I'm going to reinvent myself, might as well reinvent myself in a field that is new to me and where people don't know me and don't have a sort of, pre-established notions as to what kind of person I should be. And so that's why I changed industries. And because advertising seems to be a place where ideas and concepts and imagination is valued, and I had visited a few agencies in the past, and I had loved the atmosphere of, yes, it's very stressful, but there's a sense of personal easygoingness that I really liked. And I thought, okay, well, this is perhaps the world in which I can try that.
And did you find that to be the case?
Partly. I think I was certainly allowed from the get-go to dress the way I wanted. And so I was certainly much more feminine than I had ever been in my attire. However, in agencies, we deal with clients. And sometimes there might be a willingness not to shock clients. And so I was asked on a fairly regular basis early on in my career, and this was before, I would say, what I would call the trends revolution, right? Where you saw, this was before we saw trans icons in the media and people talking about the topic. So people didn't know how to handle those situations. I didn't know how to speak about it either. So in certain days, I was asked to dress as a boy in order not to, shock clients. And in other days, if the clients were perhaps a little bit more open-minded, I was allowed to be myself. And so I felt that, in a sense, boundaries were being set. So I didn't have absolute freedom of expression at the most basic level. In a sense, it almost felt as if I was serving at the pleasure of straight white males.
Right. So, Chris, you've presented numerous times now a talk called Losing My Privilege, What Becoming a Minority Has Taught Me About Leadership. And in it, you note that being suddenly propelled into the reality of a visible sexual minority has profoundly transformed your perception of workplace and your vision of leadership. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I think it starts also from the fact that when you become a minority, and a lot of people are just, I suppose, are born minorities. And so they see the harshness of the world, I suppose, from very early on, and perhaps they are, in a sense, it's a little sad to say, but perhaps a little bit more well-equipped to deal with it because they had to deal with it so young in life, which wasn't the case for me. I knew instinctively that being trans was going to be, or at least living my life as a trans woman, was something that was going to be difficult. I didn't expect it to be perhaps that difficult. I didn't expect the insults. I didn't expect death threats online. I didn't expect being treated as a sex worker on the street as I'm walking down the street and cars driving slowly by me asking me how much. I didn't expect any of these things, the backlash, or at least I didn't know how they were going to feel. And there's a difference between theory and practice. And the practices of this life is quite difficult. And so, that combined with heavy doses of estrogen, I would say, has probably made me generally a better person. I would say that hopefully I listened more than I did back in the day. I am more open to others. I try to be more caring. I am certainly more fragile than I have ever been, more vulnerable than I have ever been. And that sense of vulnerability, the fact that many aspects of my life are a struggle, probably affects the way I see other people and the way I talk to my teams. I try to be less authoritarian. I used to be a bit of a dictator when I was a chief editor. And perhaps sometimes I still have those reflexes because it's a way to impose a sense of authority and get things done. But I have noticed that character trait is diminishing as I'm going through these things.
You said in advertising that you have to find the right insight to create a successful campaign, when in fact it's often personal bias that's pushed into a concept. When did you come to realize that, and how are we able to double check if our own insights are actually true or if we're just imposing our views on the world?
Well, it comes from experience quite a bit, right? I'll give you a very concrete example. Very recently, I was working on an account that had to deal with health. I was looking at some concepts and I told the creatives, this kind of feels like it's been written by healthy people. So people that don't have the experience of what it feels like to depend on medicine, to depend on the relationship with a doctor or a pharmacist in order to feel well. And I think in advertising, it's a very difficult position because creatives and strategists and writers and all of these people have to find a way to relate to people with whom they don't necessarily share life experiences. And so the trick, I think, these days is how can we get as much diversity as possible, as many different ways of living into the creative teams so that we can have access to more insights. Because I can see in my day-to-day life how my appreciation and experience of very basic things has completely evolved through my transition. Health is definitely one of them. For instance, I do rely now on the medical system in order to complete my transition. I take all sorts of medications on a daily basis. And so that has completely affected my relationship to health, to performance, to so many things like that. And so my set of insights have completely changed on that topic. And I imagine that if I were to live other things, my insights would also change. My insights have changed in terms of the place of women in society. Certainly when you live it, it becomes something else. And so now that I'm less of a dominant species, I tend to see more the cracks in people. And I tend to see more the places where people need support and perhaps the places where brands would benefit from being kind or give a helping hand if they possibly can. So I tend to look at problems with that point of view. How can we be helpful? How can we connect? How can we build communities? How can we build bridges? These are all questions that I didn't ask myself before and that I ask myself a lot because of my own personal evolution.
It sounds like you're bringing a new layer of empathy into the whole process.
Definitely. And sometimes it's seen in the work, sometimes it isn't, because this is teamwork, and also I tend to bring that pretty systematically to the table, but sometimes you need an ad that's just a nice joke about potato chips. Like not everybody wants a sob story all the time. So sometimes my colleagues say, like, could you please calm down with your, heartfelt, telenovelas? Can we just do a spicy chip? So it doesn't, but that empathy is not right in every context. There are contexts when I think it is a strength, and there are contexts where I have to work and say, listen, perhaps this is not my cup of tea. You should get somebody who's really good at cracking those kind of jokes, right? That's why you need diversity in the creative sphere.
And what role do you think that organizations have to play in the context of diversity and inclusion in the workplace?
Well, obviously, right now we've been focusing a lot, I think, at least in communications, at least in my industry, we've been focusing a lot on representation. Representation is important. So making sure that in our ads, you see people from different backgrounds, whether cultural or physical or even sexual and orientations and gender and all of that. But in order to get representation right, you need the proper insights. And the proper insights will only come from hiring diversity. And right now, there's still a problem across the board, I would say, in television, in advertising, in journalism. I don't think we represent in our staff what the Canadian reality is. I am not sure that a third or to half of our employees and our talent are things other than, straight white Anglos or Francos right now, sadly.
There's still some work to be done.
There's a lot of work to be done around that. And then there's also some work to be done about customizing, I would say, the conditions of work to these particular experiences. I am lucky to receive some sort of special treatment in the sense that occasionally I stumble because physically it's very difficult. The hormones every woman will know what hormones does to a body. Imagine it's as if I had the same levels of hormone as the first trimester of pregnancy, but all my life.
Yeah.
And so I have to throw up every couple of days. It's really not terribly fun. And so sometimes I got to stay home, and sometimes, my head is spinning, and sometimes I need to sit down for a minute. And it's just the reality of the transformation. And my employers understand that. They're even looking at ways in which, how can we change our insurance program so that people like me have a place as well, and at least the right words are being used, right? It's also about, I would say, catering the experience of the company so that everybody feels at home, which means, you shouldn't feel bad about taking a break for religious reasons. You shouldn't feel bad about taking a break because I need to take a couple of weeks up to get an operation done. You shouldn't feel bad, all these things. So it's about building that level of understanding on a more granular level so that the system is not built for a certain type of people and everybody has to conform to what these people are living, right?
Yeah, that's sort of taking it beyond the diversity argument into the inclusion piece, which is about creating safe places. And it's not just a nice thing to do. It actually makes a lot of business sense, right? I loved you said in one of your articles that it's a bit like being a boxer. That you can do your job so much better if you're not, and be so much more creative if you're not fielding punches all the time, when you have an open and creative space and where you feel safe to bring your ideas to the table.
Well, exactly. And, to use that metaphor, it is like we're a boxer. I mean, everybody who works in a competitive industry has to win their little boxing match, right? But if you're a minority, you actually have to get out of your house and start punching people and then do it on the street because people are punching at you, and then do it as you get into the stadium or the gym or whatever you, and then into the ring, and then win the game, and then start punching your way back all the way back home, which is absolutely exhausting. And to me, my work, most of the time, sometimes it is super stressful, obviously, but most of the time my work is my safe space in the sense that my transness is a footnote to my day when I'm at work. And it's not when I'm at home and my neighbor doesn't want to look at me. It's not when I'm on the street and I get stared at. It's not when I'm taking a cab and I'm being misgendered. All of the time, everybody I cross on the street, I feel like I'm coming out every single time because they look at me, they see something different. And so at work, I don't have that feeling. I don't have that fear. And so I can use all of that negative energy that I typically use to protect myself and build a wall between me and the world. I can take that and try as much as possible to channel it into my work and have more energy to hopefully solve the problems my clients are coming with me to solve. So, it doesn't happen all the time because sadly, sometimes something bad that happens I would say in real life, in the life outside of the office, will bleed into my day, and so my mood will be affected by it. But still, work for me is my safe space, much more than any other place, including my home. Because at home, then I'm back alone, and I think about my life, and it gets a little bit more depressing, I would say.
Right. Chris, what do you think would help change attitudes towards transgender people? Is there a way that we can evolve past the fighting on the street and the punching?
Hire them. Hiring them is hire us. It would be a very good start, because if you live with us on every day, you realize that we are very normal people, and we try to have very normal lives. And yes, we are a little bit beaten up, that's for sure. I mean, we have a lot of battle wounds, all of us, we do. But that might make us better in so many ways. I like to say that trans people are stronger than most people, because we have to deal with a lot. I like to say that trans people are more resilient because we have to deal with a lot every day. And I have to say that we're more creative, and we're more creative because we had to invent ourselves and reinvent ourselves a number of times, usually in our lives. And those are good qualities to have in an employee. So I would say hire us. Do not be afraid of the risk, of the reputation risk, to have somebody who looks like perhaps a woman in a men's suit or a man wearing a dress, at first glance. You have to go beyond that. And you'll be surprised how quickly people forget about gender stereotypes. And not only, open your arms and accept those people, but actually be a partner to their transition, actually being able to see them evolve and blossom into the thing they want it to be, I think is something very enriching for the people that are allowing that to happen, that are building. I know a lot of my colleagues feel a sense of pride that I feel safe here. They actually get a good feeling about that, and they are proud of that. When I've given my conference to my colleagues, everybody in the room was crying, because I think they understood that they each had a role to play in the fact that I am happier today than I am or have been in the past. So there is a payoff. There's a payoff in terms of business, because I think we are quality people, and there is a payoff in the sense that it actually is nice to do the right thing.
How do you see the future for women of all sexualities in the workplace?
Well, I think now we are beginning to understand that women come in all shapes and sizes and orientations and identities. And I think women, in the traditional sense, let's say cis women, have the opportunity to build a broader coalition. I think that for a long time, men were a pretty exclusive bunch. And I just came back from a conference in Chicago last week called the 3% Conference, which are people in the advertising industry, and focusing on how can we get more women on board, and more women at the VP level and the C level and the creative director level and all of that. And what was beautiful is that on stage you had, I would say, a cross of people talking about their cultural realities, people talking about the variety of their gender expression, people talking about sizeism and all these things. And I think women understand intersectionality, right? The fact that the issues of one community has an effect on the other, and that basically we are all fighting similar battles. So I think women can be coalition builders, and they are the ones that will make the world of business more diverse, more open, and more creative. I think they are going to be the leaders of most industries very soon, and everybody will be better for it. And I think everybody will have better working conditions and more money.
And better products, yes.
Men are terrible managers. They're horrible managers. I mean, sorry guys, but I've been one. I know. I mean, men really, God.
I loved what you said in one of your articles as well about the sense of rebellion coming from women, and you talk about the coalition, and I'm seeing it as well. I'm just seeing massive amounts of women from, as you said, all sexualities, all races, all types of different backgrounds coming together and supporting each other, and it's inspiring.
It really is. Really, I mean, every time I'm in a room and with women, and we're talking about these sort of topics, diversity, inclusion, all of that, there's a real sense of, you know what, together, let's not wait. We're going to change the world right now. A lot of women are talking about starting their own businesses because they're tired of waiting for the world to change, for people to catch up. And they're like, you know what, I'm going to be rich on my own. I'm going to do my thing on my own, and I'm going to create this right now, and I'm going to build the next empire. I think that's fantastic. I am hopeful, you know, unless we have some kind of weird ecological catastrophe that all of a sudden, you know, some kind of giant tidal wave that, but, you know, outside of that, I think we may be in a better place than we think. Because right now, if you look at the media, if you look at social media, there is a lot of hate, there is a lot of tension, there is a lot of aggression. But I think the resistance is organized. I think it is ready to go. And I think in the next couple of years, we're going to finally tip over into a world where more people have a say into shaping codes and the reality of life.
I love that. And you've left me with a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Oh, God. Wow.
So that's good. I actually heard, I read a book that said women have gone beyond liberated now, and now they're empowered. And in my industry, and what I'm seeing is so many women are leaving organizations, and they've stopped waiting for somebody to come and help them, and for the companies to change for them, and they are taking that power and that control back and are building.
We are not damsels in distress anymore.
No, this is absolutely 100% true, and I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed speaking with you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Women Who Innovate is a podcast series produced by Randstad Canada as part of their Women Transforming the Workplace program. We hope the insights provide you with a deeper understanding of the role that women play in transforming their workplaces and inspire you in your own journey. To find out more about our Women Transforming the Workplace program, please visit us at www.randstad.ca/women. Thank you for listening.